word of life. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you.
With your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
According to you, Lord.
Jesus told his disciples a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? No disciple is superior to the teacher, but when fully trained, every disciple will be like his teacher. Why would you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me remove that splinter in your eye," but when you do not even notice the wooden beam in your own eye? You hypocrite! Remove the wooden beam first from your eye, then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its fruit. For people who do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles. A good person out of the store of goodness in his heart produces good, but an evil person out of a store of evil produces evil. For from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good afternoon. Today's Gospel is really a good news of another great parable of Jesus as he continues this sermon on the plain that we hear from St. Luke. He had already given us the demands and the blessings and rewards of the Beatitudes, and he gave us a most difficult challenge that we heard last week when he told us to love our enemies and to turn the other cheek. And now today he tells us, stop judging others and speak only what is good. He tells us today we must always look first inward at ourselves before we ever attempt to criticize or point out the faults of another person. And he makes it clear to us that the words we speak truly reflect the intentions of our heart. A few more powerful lessons in how to live truly as his disciples. In this teaching, I really love the analogies that he uses within this parable. He uses that image of seeing the splinter in your brother's eye and ignoring that wood beam in your own eye, or how a blind person cannot lead another blind person without danger of both of them falling into the pit, and how a good tree does not bear rotten fruit, and how we are known by the fruit that we bear. I'm sure that everyone here at some point has driven on the highway behind a truck or a van, and you saw a bumper sticker on it that said, "How's my driving? Call 1-800-555 some number to report any problems." I think that's a pretty bold and brave thing to put on any vehicle. I could tell you my wife would say our phone would be ringing off the hook if I put that on my car. But in essence, that message is so important because it points out that constructive criticism is oftentimes very needed and appreciated. But it can also remind us of how safe we're driving. Begs the question, can we truly criticize someone who is doing the same thing that we so often do? We often find it easy and quick to point out the faults of others, while we ourselves are often marked by those same faults and those same shortcomings. I also once read that in a church in the 18th century, there was a parishioner, and his title was called the Pointer. And when the preacher stressed a particular vice, it was the pointer's job to call out the name of the person present in the congregation who was guilty of that vice and to point to them. I'm sure many of us would have loved to have that assignment, and I'm sure we would have been very good at it as well. But how often, in so many other ways, do we quickly come to condemn and call to justice those who we consider to be sinful, those who may not follow the same moral code that we do, those who might tend to be different in their cultures and how they express their beliefs. We oftentimes offer our opinions in the public square to judge them. But I guess today that public square is mostly social media, either Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. There's a lot being said out there. And it's real easy to see the mistakes that other people make, but it's not so easy to look inward and see ourselves and our own faults and our own sinfulness. I believe that Jesus was a great psychologist when he said, first deal with your own problems and faults before you start trying to fix everybody else. He tells us we must first recognize our own sinfulness and then clean up our own act before we can rightfully offer positive and constructive criticism to help another person to transform their lives. We so often refuse to recognize and acknowledge how we ourselves have failed to live up to the ideals of his law of love and of the Beatitudes, but we're so quick to point out how others have failed to do so. And Jesus reminds us today that every time we do see the fault in another person, it should be an opportunity for us to examine our own conscience and work to prepare the brokenness and the sinfulness in our own lives. And only then, once we've come to the reconciliation of our own wrongs, can we ever attempt to assist another person to see the truth and the light in Christ Jesus. And only then are we not the hypocrites that Jesus points out. We must see and remove that wood beam from our own eyes first, or open our eyes clearly in order for us to lead someone else to righteousness. Otherwise, it's truly the blind leading the blind, and we know what can happen when that's the case. And when we are called to offer criticism or offer counsel or advice, we need to do it in a manner with words that can build up and words that don't destroy the spirit of another person. We need to be aware of and avoid excessive and sharp criticism when in authority, whether it's as a parent or a boss or even clergy, or even just a trusted friend or a casual acquaintance. At the same time, we also need to be aware of our tendencies to hide the truth so as not to offend anyone. And we're all very good at that. Just say what people want to hear. Don't upset people with the truth. But we know that words are important. And Jesus reminds us today that words truly reflect the intentions of the heart. And when a person speaks the truth from the goodness of their heart, we know that this is a good person. When someone is continually stirring up trouble with words of malice or deceit, we know that this person is truly troubled. The fruit reveals the person. When we speak our opinions and we offer our advice, when we speak about or on behalf of another person, or when we advocate for a cause or speak against some public policy, we must always be reminded that words can either build up or words can destroy, and that they reveal the true intentions of our heart, just as Jesus tells us. The mouth speaks what the heart feels. So when that urge strikes to post something on Twitter or Facebook, or in that next meeting at work, or just among friends at a restaurant, or maybe right here outside of church, let's ask ourselves, are my words the words of Jesus? Are my words reflecting the image of who I know I am? Are my words those of truth, of justice? Are they truly words of love and mercy? Or are they words of contempt, ill will, and division? Are the words I'm speaking maybe really masking and at the same time reflecting a degree of racism, sexism, or any other degradation of entire groups of people that are different than me? Are my words building up the spirit of another person, bringing them closer to God? Or are my words capable of destroying the spirit of that person? You know, when we gossip, I think we often tell people a lot more about ourselves than the person we're trying to condemn. So let's always remember that our words reflect the true intents of our heart, a heart that either rejects Jesus or a heart that shows a desire to follow his law of love. Let others come to know us as good by our words and by our actions, because they'll certainly know quickly whether we're a good tree or a rotten tree by the fruit of our words. And so as we prepare to receive Christ in the Eucharist this day, and we ready ourselves for the season of Lent, let's take time to reflect on this message of the gospel. Use this parable as a Lenten reflection, and pray that our words can always be a sign of our Christian love toward one another, and that we find the courage to look inward upon ourselves, to evaluate our most inner thoughts, our dispositions, our attitudes, our values, and our conceptions. Are they in line with our Catholic Christian code, of morals and social teaching. Let's also seek to reveal and acknowledge our own faults and sinfulness, and ask God for the strength to overcome them through our sorrow and through his mercy. And most of all, let's all pray that he allow the light of his love to shine from us as we lead others safely to him. God bless you.